This free step-by-step video comes to you directly from Haynes, creators of the world's best repair manuals. Fix your car or truck the right way with our accurate and reliable information at your side. You can complete more than 200 jobs on this vehicle when you purchase the complete online manual at Haynes.com.
Front strut assembly replacement. Open the driver's side door and pull the hood release lever located by the kick panel. Pull the hood safety latch forward, then raise the hood. Apply the parking brake. Chock the rear wheels to prevent the vehicle from rolling. Loosen the front wheel lug nuts. Place a floor jack under one side of the vehicle, positioning it under the reinforced frame area, then raise the front of the vehicle. Support it with a jack stand placed under the notched area of the rocker panel seam. Then lower the vehicle onto the jack stand and remove the jack. If raising both sides of the vehicle, move the floor jack to the opposite side and place it under the reinforced frame area on that side. Raise the front of the vehicle, then place a second jack stand under the notched area on that rocker panel seam and lower the floor jack. When raising both sides of the vehicle, make sure the vehicle is level. Remove the front wheel lug nuts and remove the wheel. Unstake the drive axle hub nut using a small chisel and hammer. Prevent the hub from turning by having an assistant apply the brakes or by inserting a punch into the brake disc cooling vane, then loosen and remove the drive axle hub nut with a breaker bar and socket. A cheater pipe may be required to give you enough leverage to loosen the nut. Position a drain pan under the brake assembly and clean the caliper and surrounding area with brake cleaner. Position a large C-clamp over the caliper and squeeze the piston back into its bore to ease caliper removal. As the piston is depressed, the fluid in the master cylinder reservoir will rise. Make sure it doesn't overflow. Remove the brake caliper bracket mounting bolts, then lift the caliper and bracket as an assembly off the brake disc. Disconnect the brake hose grommet from the bracket on the strut and suspend the caliper assembly with a length of wire or coat hanger tied to the frame. Remove the brake disc retaining screw. Spray a small amount of penetrating oil where the brake meets the hub, being careful not to get any on the brake disc. Rotate the brake disc while gently tapping on the disc to free it from the wheel hub. Remove the brake disc dust shield bolts and detach the shield from the hub. Disengage the ABS speed sensor harness retainer, then remove the sensor fastener and pull the sensor from the steering knuckle. Counterhold the stabilizer bar link and remove the nut, then detach the link from the strut. Counterhold the tie rod end nut and back the nut off a few turns. Install a puller to free the tie rod end from the steering knuckle. Remove the puller, then remove the tie rod end nut. Install the puller again and press the tie rod end out of the steering knuckle, then move the tie rod out of the way. Counterhold the ball joint stud and loosen the ball joint nut a few turns. Install a ball joint separator tool and separate the ball joint from the steering knuckle, then remove the ball joint nut completely. Use a pry bar to push the lower control arm downward until the ball joint can be separated from the steering knuckle. Swing the knuckle hub assembly out away from the vehicle while pulling the end of the drive axle out from the hub. Use a length of rope or wire to secure the outer end of the drive axle to avoid unnecessary strain on the inner CV joint. Use a pry bar to push the lower control arm downwards until the ball joint can be reinstalled into the steering knuckle. Place a floor jack under the control arm and raise the control arm slightly to take the weight off the strut clip. Working inside the engine compartment, remove the strut dust cover. The strut clip should then be able to rotate. If you can't rotate it, raise the control arm with the jack until you can. Using 2 screwdrivers, pry the 2 ends of the strut clip in opposite directions to separate and break the clip. Lower the floor jack and allow the strut assembly to come down, then lift the assembly up until the ball joint stud is out of the steering knuckle and carefully remove the strut assembly from the vehicle. With the strut and steering knuckle removed, place the assembly on the ground and remove the strut pinch bolt and nut. Separate the strut from the steering knuckle. Discard the old pinch bolt and nut, then insert the strut into the steering knuckle and install the new bolt and nut. Tighten the strut pinch bolt and nut securely. Then tighten the nut to the specified torque setting. Insert the top of the strut up into the opening, then lower the ball joint stud into the control arm. Place a floor jack under the control arm and raise the control arm until the strut is seated in the opening. Install the new strut retaining clip halves under the strut flange. Then squeeze the clips until they are fully locked together. There should be multiple audible clicks as the clips engage with each other. Once the clip is in place, make sure it can be rotated, then install the cover. Lower the floor jack, then use a pry bar to push the lower control arm downwards and install the stub axle into the hub and the ball joint into the steering knuckle. Install a new ball joint nut. Counterhold the ball joint stud and tighten the ball joint nut securely. Then tighten the ball joint nut to the specified torque settings with the following two-step process. Clean the tie rod end in the steering knuckle opening, then insert the tie rod end ball joint into the knuckle. Install a new tie rod end nut, then tighten the nut, drawing the tie rod end into the steering knuckle. Tighten the tie rod end nut to the specified torque setting in the following two steps. Connect the stabilizer bar link to the strut and install the new nut. Counterhold the stabilizer bar link ball stud and tighten the nut. Tighten the stabilizer bar link nut to the specified torque setting. Clean and install the speed sensor into the steering knuckle and tighten the bolt securely. Then connect the ABS speed sensor harness retainer to the strut bracket. Install the disc brake dust shield and tighten the bolts securely. Place the brake disc into the wheel hub and align the holes. Install the disc retaining screw and tighten the screws securely. Install the brake caliper and mounting bracket and one of the mounting bolts to hold it in place. Install the remaining caliper bracket mounting bolt and tighten both bolts. Tighten the brake caliper mounting bracket bolts to the specified torque setting. Remove the length of wire or coat hanger tied to the frame, then connect the brake hose grommet to the strut bracket. Repeat this procedure for the remaining strut assembly on the opposite side. Pump the pedal slowly several times to seat the pads against the discs. Install the wheel and lug nuts and hand tighten the nuts. Raise one side of the vehicle at a time, then remove the jack stand and lower that side to the ground. Then raise the other side of the vehicle and remove that jack stand. Tighten the wheel lug nuts to the specified torque setting. Remove the chock from the rear wheels. Check the brake fluid in the master cylinder reservoir and add new brake fluid if necessary until the fluid reaches the max mark in the reservoir. Clean off any brake fluid that may have dripped or spilled, then reinstall the reservoir cap.